for men and women, confidence is a key to, unlocking, every door you will come in life, whether it's in business or relationships or, your own personal growth.
Yeah.
And just trusting life, but part of that is having the confidence to do that and really believe in yourself, right?
Yeah. Hi, you're on How Did It Happen with Matt Literal, and today we have our guest, Chris LaLanne. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Stoked to be here.
Welcome to the show. So your great-granduncle, Jack LaLanne, was a father of fitness back in the day.
Yep.
And you're following in his footsteps. So can you tell us how that happened?
Absolutely. So I am Jack's grandnephew on my dad's side.
Okay.
And I am the only family member directly related to him that has pursued the health and fitness field as a career. Jack has children. He and Elaine have a son, John Allen LaLanne. John is a musician and a well-known surfboard shaper.
Okay.
And he has another son who's a bit older, but that's Elaine's son from her first marriage, Danny. And Danny's much older, but has been in Hollywood film production for his whole life. Anyhow, nice. I'm one of three kids. I've got an older brother and a younger sister, but I'm still the only one in the LaLanne family that has pursued the legacy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How young were you when you first wanted to really feel like you're getting into fitness?
Yeah, it's a good question because I had this talk with my son the other day, who is now 15. I started at the very same age. I was in high school, a freshman in high school, and we had a weightlifting class. So that was my first exposure to what's called the universal exercise machine. It was a plate, a pin loaded, had four sides to it. And we went into a room and used the equipment. And in high school as a freshman, that was my first exposure to it.
Okay.
And I don't remember stopping at that point. I got into, free weights at the gym because we didn't really have those in the high school gym. So, I was 15 years old, same age as my son now.
All right. What was your first gym that you joined?
That would be a 24-hour fitness that was close to our home there in Marin County. And at one point in time, this same location was a Jack LaLanne European health spa because he had a chain of clubs up and down California at one point.
Okay. So he actually had health spas and gyms?
He did. So Jack LaLanne licensed the name, and it was a franchise up and down California. I think there were 230 clubs at one point.
Wow.
But what you see nowadays, 24-hour fitness or family fitness, that was the Jack LaLanne chain of gyms. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. It's very cool. And have you ever joined like a Gold's Gym or anything like that, or just?
I have. I mean, in college, and through college as a trainer, I've been in virtually every gym setting, from Gold's and Powerhouse to the serious bodybuilding gyms to 24-hour, even Planet Fitness, which is where I take my son today.
Right.
So I've been in all of them. Yes.
Yeah. I really like the old Gold's Gym from like the 90s. like
you
95 to 2000.
You don't see many of those anymore. It's called like a showcase bodybuilding gym.
Yeah.
You don't. They're still around though. You know, and the hardcore bodybuilding scene is still there. You just got to kind of look a little harder. There are fewer locations nowadays than there were 10, 15 years ago.
My friends and I used to go to Venice Beach down there and
Muscle Beach.
Muscle Beach, and we would see like Arnold Schwarzenegger working out there and stuff. That was pretty cool. Good times. Yeah,
you've got to visit that at least once in your life. In fact, I'm doing some traveling with my son this summer, and I plan to visit that with him to plant that same memory in his mind, because it's kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. Have you ever been over to Miami Beach?
I have not.
Over there?
No.
That one's a little warmer. It's warmer than like Venice Beach. But I like Venice Beach. I'm a California guy.
Yeah, but the same boardwalk set up on the beach.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah.
The girls over there are a little, how should I say, prettier and tanner.
Yeah, right.
But nothing against California girls.
Right. Well, I went to San Diego State, so I'm a beach guy, and I spent lots of time down there in La Jolla and Pacific Beach, and you know, I can tell you that, like, you know, when you're close to the water, you're on the beach, fitness and health is far more obvious, you know, and people are taking it seriously, and it's a value that you know, it stands out there, and it's you know, it was a positive influence on me.
Mm-hmm. And as you finished college, what happened next?
So when I finished my degree in kinesiology, I got an opportunity to work for a professional baseball team as an assistant coach. So I went and spent 2 years with the Kansas City Royals.
Wow.
In Florida at the time. This was 2002. They shared a facility with the Houston Astros. So I went out and spent an entire year with their minor league team, taking them through training camp, rehabbing injuries, and traveling what was then called the Grapefruit League, which is the entire Florida panhandle, riding on a bus with 25 young guys. It was fun. I love baseball. I still take my son to the games every year, and it's something that's part of my family history. Baseball is fun for me.
Yeah, I've always liked the San Francisco Giants.
Oh yeah,
probably my team.
Yeah,
I've gone to many games there, and back in the day of Barry Bonds and Matt Williams, and when all those guys were playing.
Yep,
those were. I think that was the heyday. I think in the 2000s. It was
for
the Giants, at least,
for sure. Just that the baseball experience is fun for me to be a part of it and introduce my kids to it. Like I told you, I'm taking my son to watch them in Arizona this year, so that'll be fun for both of us.
Yeah. Has he been at any other games yet?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've been to the Giants Stadium, and even here to the River Cats in Sacramento. We have fun, and we're also A's fans, so we get to watch them there here at the River Cats.
Yeah, I believe they're here for 2 more years.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool for us.
It is. Lots of baseball going on around here. Yeah.
Yeah, and so now you're starting. You had a CrossFit gym for a time in San Francisco for a while. How did you get into that as you were expanding your
CrossFit was a movement that I was introduced to while I was a trainer at a gym in San Francisco. It was a sports club, LA, that was part of a Four Seasons where I was seeing clients as a private trainer.
Okay.
And one day I had a coworker, come up to me and say, "Hey, Chris, you'd love this. It's called CrossFit. Go check it out." And he gave me the website. So I went and checked it out, and I remember sitting down, and I didn't get up for like an hour just because I was so fascinated by the workouts and the program. And from that point on, I started to, study the CrossFit method and practice it one-on-one with my personal training clients.
Yeah.
Until one of my clients said, "Hey, Chris, I've got a group of guys. Let's go do this outside the gym."
Yeah.
And that was the start of what became a CrossFit gym that I opened down the street in South of Market.
Oh, nice.
So it started with a client that said, "Hey, Chris, you can do this yourself." We found a few investors, found a building, adopted a business model from another CrossFit in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Called Petronic Fitness, ran by Andy Petronic. Shout out to Andy, who trained us on how to run the business and grow the gym. And that was the start of what was a very, very successful program for 9 years.
Wow.
From 2008 all the way into 2017.
Wow. Almost a decade.
It was, at the time, CrossFit had a large following. It was really exciting for everyone. And then, things changed in business. Things changed in real estate. We had a hard time staying in the right building for what we did.
Yeah.
And, we closed the gym and moved on, and that was sort of the end of the beginning of what I do now.
Right. So tell us how you happen to fall into what you're doing now, which has to do with you're like building this community of men, basically, that you're trying to get to the 4 stages or 4 peers of your new training, which is...
So when COVID came, I was a gym owner. I had a studio that was forced to close. And, at the time, I was really patient. I believed that we could reopen the gym, but after about 6 months of, gym closure, telling the members we're going to come back, and then finally, it was not an easy decision, but it had taken about 2 years to grow the membership to a point where only I knew how hard it was going to be to come back.
Right.
As a business owner. And so I made the decision to close the gym and go back to the drawing board in terms of my experience, my education, and really my passion and what I wanted to do for a living in terms of a career change. So that is when, I went into I actually had to, go through some personal struggles as part of this process. Okay?
I think we all did during COVID. I had a few resets. I know.
So I mean,
you had resets. I can tell whatever story.
I'll share mine, and then maybe you want to share yours. But closing the gym, being forced to close essentially, and then kind of losing my identity around the business and what I was doing. It just sent me into this self-destruction, honestly. And I started to get into behavior and ultimately ended up in jail. So this started when I started drinking again and started to, hang out with people that were not, and got in a couple relationships that were not supportive. They were around the alcohol and around the drinking.
Right.
And I was drinking and driving.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's also something that, you know, if you drink, you know that you've been behind the wheel. This can happen. So I found myself there and ended up in jail. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it just takes going over the curb, or just the cop watching you from the bar, or even on the freeway if you have a tail light out or a headlight out.
Yeah.
You know, or you just make a crazy move for some reason.
Well, mine was a little bit more serious.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I actually ended up with 2 DUIs in a 4-month period.
Okay.
The second one, I ended up crashing into someone's house. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to be alive, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it had gotten way out of hand. I had lost control, like literally, of my life. And so I ended up in jail for 7 days where I had an epiphany and made a discovery, and it's really part of my program and what I teach now. And it's something I take a lot of pride in you know, my own story and overcoming those struggles, and then helping other people do the same through these practices.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit of each stage?
I will. Yeah. So, the first sort of discovery and really the first pillar of what I teach people now was that, when it comes to your health, you have to start with your body.
Yeah.
And your physical health is paramount before you can grow your mindset and who you're being in your life. You've really got to take control of your personal physical health. Okay.
Yeah.
And I, had a struggle with alcohol, obviously, but also with sugar and my diet. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the discovery that I had made was that if you can reduce the amount of food and, improve the quality of the food that you're eating through a mechanism of meal timing or reducing how many meals you eat in a day, it's like a fast track and a shortcut to resetting your hormones and your metabolism. Okay. And so, rewind back to when I ended up in jail for 7 days. I also did a 7-day water fast. So I did not eat the jail food for 7 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't that hard, but the hard part was committing to saying no to food and then just experiencing the benefits and the clarity and the confidence that I got through that 7-day water fast experience. And how my body transformed, how I had lost, almost 15 pounds, the mental clarity I had experienced, and then just the levity was unlike anything I had tried before. I'd never experienced this. So, following the 7 days in jail, I then went back into studying intermittent and extended fasting and how to do this for, my clients.
Right.
And so that research allowed me to create a progressive implementation program for people to go from, your standard 4 or 5 meals in a day down to 3 to 1 meal in a day, and then into 1, 2, or 3 days fasted.
Right.
And that progression has, like tenfold benefits, but the main one was that you were able to reset your metabolism, your hormones, and get control of your body.
Right.
Okay. So that is the biggest pillar of what I teach now. But in addition to that, there are, mindset strategies and habits that we implement. So it's structuring your day with a plan. So looking at a week at a glance, a month at a glance, exactly when you're fasting, how to do that long term, and then other skills like meditation, journaling, your family, your work environment, how all those parts fit into your new lifestyle. So it's a fairly holistic approach to implementing behavior change through the coaching and the support and the accountability.
Okay. And as this is happening, how involved are you with your clients? Are there different levels?
So with what I do, it's a really intimate sort of one-on-one relationship, and so it's a very short leash. And when you're making changes like we make, you've got to really start from the beginning, get a clear why, as to why do we want to make these changes?
Yeah.
What's your number one goal? What is the root cause, right?
Yeah.
So why are we here? How do we get there? And then, what is your plan? What's realistic for you today, right now, given your current reality, and where you want to be in 30 days, right? So if I said, all right, we want to drop 20 pounds and, start jogging or getting on the treadmill for an hour every day, right? We would target that goal over the course of 30 days, so you knew exactly where your eating windows are, your exercise is, how much water you're drinking. So you're implementing all of these disciplines over the course of a day, in a week, and a month.
Okay.
So you got a lot of clarity on what you're doing, when you're doing it, and then we get on weekly phone calls to make sure that you are implementing, navigating pitfalls, and how are we progressing?
Yeah.
So the coaching relationship is imperative for making progress, and like I said, navigating through life's, whatever's needs to be addressed, because a lot of this has to do with your career, your family, and your time, and how much time you're spending, making these changes and creating awareness around that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that structure, that model have you had someone mentor you like that you look up to? In a sense? Or have you always been your own advocate of researching and finding a way to make a plan?
I would say what I teach now is really a collection of my experiences, my education, what I've learned, but for the most part, it's a lot of it's been, I'm the single subject experiment. Through everything, whether it's a new exercise in the gym, or if it's a new way to break your fast, and food choice. I'm a leader that practices, and leading by example, and whether it's my colleagues in the medical field, because I do work for a doctor as well.
Okay.
Or if it's a coworker, a trainer at the gym, what I do is really like I said, a collection of what I do myself. And so whatever I teach you today is something that I believe in and I practice myself.
Right.
So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of, and honestly results that are around what I experience myself every day and how I can help people, explain that to them and have my finger on the pulse of what's happening
Right.
to your body.
And their mindset and their lifestyle.
Right.
That's great. And if someone wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way they can do that?
So you can find me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, also at my website address, which is my name, which is chrislalanne.com. That's ChrisLalanne.com.
All right. If you were 19 again, knowing what you know in the present, what's one thing you would tell yourself?
I would tell my 19-year-old self to be confident and have no fear, and go forward with passion and have a sense of certainty that no one can take away from you. I think confidence is the missing skill, the missing characteristic of an adolescent, or especially in terms of manhood.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to teach myself, my son, I would tell my 19-year-old self to smile and keep your chin up and lead with confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you advise yourself to actually pursue finding more ways to become confident?
Absolutely. I think it's a daily practice.
Yeah.
For men and women, confidence is a key to, unlocking, every door you will come in life, whether it's in business or relationships or, your own personal growth.
Yeah.
And just trusting life, but part of that is having the confidence to do that and really believe in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you could think of one way to express to someone or one of your clients to become more confident, what would maybe one key thing that they could just start to boost their confidence?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest word that comes to me there is fear. Fear of, of criticism, fear of judgment, fear of what other people are going to say or think about you. And, I just turned 50 and I feel like I'm just now understanding how to be fearless and remove that from every day in my life, every conversation I have, every interaction, and honestly, with myself, the self-dialogue, the self-talk.
Right.
So it's kind of fearless self-talk is really just, promoting yourself and believing in yourself and having that confidence. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I'm on the same page. I'm 48 right now. So
Yeah.
I'm like feeling that it's almost like an enlightenment. Like in a sense, to me, I feel like, why was I so worried about that? And it doesn't even matter.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when
Perspective. And perception is a key there, though. It's like, how do you view something? What lens are you looking through it?
right.
So the lenses change as you get older and more experienced, and especially as a father with parenthood, but and now teaching, my kids these values that if I'm talking to him about it and I'm trying to teach him something that then obviously, it's important to me and it's important enough for me to really share that with everyone, and with my clients. So, I think it's limiting beliefs also that you develop over time about yourself or what you're capable of, what you're not capable of, you know? So for me, like, and this year, in fact, I feel like it's going to be where I make the biggest changes and have the most growth when it comes to
mindset,
confidence, man.
and confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed your son asking you more questions about certain things that he may not be confident about?
He's pretty quiet. I wish he would talk more and tell me more about what he's thinking, but I see his actions. He'll make some comments. I mean, this year we just got in the gym, so he's a little bit more aware of his body and his performance.
Yeah.
Especially around other kids, whether it's on the baseball field or in the PE locker room.
Right.
This is where you start to really.
Those are always areas when you're a kid that you either have the confidence or
it's tricky and it can go either way.
Yeah.
And so I think he's got, I think the gym, the weight training, physical strength for him is where I've started, so that and as a foundation.
Yeah.
I would recommend that for every father with young child, a young man, to instill that physical confidence through the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no other way to do it.
Right.
And so that's where I've started, and I'm loving every minute of it in there with him, and I know he is awesome too. So yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome. Now, do you take on women as well, or
I do.
Just staying with men?
I do. I obviously over the years, like as a gym owner, as a personal trainer, I work with both men and women, and I enjoy designing programs for both of them. And it is important, to have someone that understands the difference, because often the training, the nutrition, the implementation of that is different for men and women.
Yeah,
so
physically different, mentally different.
Absolutely. So while I do support men and I have a group of men, I coach both men and women.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your program called?
So it's called the Iron Discipline System, and it's an executive coaching program for both men and women that are either businessmen, or women. They're family oriented, they're career oriented, they're accomplished, they're busy, but they're also wanting to maintain that performance and that peak performance in life and improve in every area of their life, whether it's their health, improving their family, the relationships, the career, productivity. So as a life coach, we look at your whole, life holistically and how we can improve every aspect of your life. Obviously, coming from a fitness background, I'm going to prioritize your physical health, and use that as the foundation of peak performance and growth in every area of your life.
Right. And that makes sense because when you're physical, it shoots off electrons, neurons, and your brain chemistry is much more. You're more apt to have a healthier mindset and see the physical and feel better in life.
Absolutely.
Which affects everybody, the way you treat people, the way you treat yourself, and everything.
Yep.
What's one of your one client from any time in your past that has had the most success?
One client, I'd say, I've had a ton of clients that have made transformations in weight loss, and specifically over the last 2 years, implementing this fasting framework.
Yeah.
One client I'd like to mention is her name is Monica. She has lost over 40 pounds within the past 9 months, and really transformed her identity, not just physically, but I have seen her self-confidence, her self-esteem, her belief in herself, and she's carried this into her career, her work environment, at home, what she's doing with, her family and her friends, and it's been really fun to see. And she's someone who I see here locally, and is one of the most recent transformations. But hers is one that stands out most. Not only are we really good friends, but as a client, watching her transform has been incredibly rewarding.
And would you say you definitely have seen like mind shift growth from her?
Absolutely. That, like I said, not just physical, but emotional, mental, and really an empowerment that has carried over to every other aspect of her life.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's what everybody wants, I think. At some point, they just want to feel that transformation or that growth happen.
Yeah, it really was, a massive shift that she made in not only her relationship with food, but it put her in control finally. And she's, honestly, it's a shift that everyone can make, but it was just the way in which she was,
dedicating,
thinking about how food was a part of her life, how it supported her, what was holding her back, what was the root cause. So, there was a lot of underlying sort of work that we did, but she had to like really experience what it felt like not to eat, and be okay with sitting with hunger, saying no to food, and the empowerment and the control that you feel when you're in that, that new position. Anyhow, it's something I really enjoy teaching, and it's been fun to watch her make that transformation.
That's great. Okay, now I'm going to do some what if questions. So say you have someone out there that can't really afford coaching, but they want to start, and they use food as an emotional trigger. Like if they're stressed or depressed, what do you think 1 or 2 steps they could take to shifting away from that or getting away from that as a emotional support?
So
that you would recommend?
Okay. So, food, like in terms of emotional, your relationship with food, oftentimes, eating food habits develop from stress, right? Or we call this an emotional sort of trigger. And one thing that I've found super helpful, to be honest, is to willingly create distance from any food or any drinks for periods of time. And, when someone has not ever, attempted to remove the food or the drink entirely, you kind of have this fear, right? You're like, oh no, then what am I going to do, right?
Then you almost want to go back to it just from that emotion.
Right. So what I do is I give you permission to say no, and together we're going to make a commitment. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to go a portion of the day and commit to a portion of the day without the food, right? So what do you do if you're not eating? Then you've got to sort of fill that void doing something, right? So what we do is we drink water, right? So you've seen people carry around the water bottles and all the people with their, their ice Stanley cups and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that because at least, that it's a mechanism that's in front of them that's a reminder to drink the water. Right. And so that's exactly what I do with my clients. It's like, let's get a bottle. That's your reminder to implement that habit, which is just drink water for a portion of the day. And what that does is it actually physiologically reduces your blood sugar over time.
Okay.
So if you're able to do that for a number of days, over time, the emotional trigger to want to grab sugar and go back to the substance or the food or drink you're trying to take out, it actually physiologically becomes easier.
Okay.
So
great tip.
Water is your friend. It can help reduce blood sugar, insulin, and also that emotional trigger to want to eat or drink sugar, right?
Yeah.
Or have whatever that is you're trying to eliminate.
Right.
So water is a huge part of it. I call it super hydration.
Okay.
And it really is drinking X amount of, X ounces of water every day before you eat your first meal.
Okay.
All right. So that's your first step one for you in terms of the coaching is drink the water. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that tip. I'm sure someone out there will pick up on that and hopefully they try that.
Yeah, they will for sure.
And do you recommend starting walking, just doing it? Or
if you're, let's say you're not a gym person, you don't have a gym membership, and I've taken you on as a client. The first thing I would have you do is start walking and start, racking up the steps.
Yeah.
The goal would be to get 10,000 steps a day minimum. If you're starting from zero, okay?
Yeah. So explain if someone's never tracked their steps, like how, and most people are between 5'2" and 5'10", right-ish.
Right.
How long does that take a normal person?
So
that's about 5 miles, right?
Yes, and most people can get 10,000 steps with 45 to 60 minutes of walking.
Okay.
So, if you can walk for an hour a day, that as a starting time stamp, that would be the goal. If you're not tracking your steps, but even if you're starting from zero, start at 30 minutes of walking, which is 4,000 or 5,000 steps, and then go from there. But walking is probably the easiest, most convenient. It's free.
Yeah.
Low impact, and you're gonna accelerate all of those positive markers that you get from exercise. You're gonna start there with walking.
What drives you in your mind and in life to create new systems for people's health and that drive to want to help others?
Yeah. Well, it starts with why. There's actually a book written, Simon Sinek, I think, is the author.
Oh, yeah, Simon Sinek.
It starts with why is the title of the book, and that's really where I had to go back to myself and figure out why I wanted to pursue fitness coaching as a career. And for me, it's because I'm a leader, I'm a father now, and I want to lay a foundation for my kids so that they have the values and the beliefs to be the best they can be in life.
Yeah.
And beyond that, where it's pushed me into as a professional is to create my own systems and built around those values and my own beliefs so that I can help other men and women overcome some of the struggles I've overcome, but also course correct and have the support and the accountability to do that. And it's something I searched for through my own trials and tribulations, and I did get help. I did get guidance. I did have mentors. And so I know how important having someone in your life is like that. And so that's now my mission, is to be that support, be the light for people that need direction. And, I'm doing that through my own story, but first through my own discovery and discovering my why, which is my kids and my legacy as a father.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show today, Chris. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely have you back soon.
Right on.
And please tell the audience how they could reach you one more time.
Absolutely. And thanks again for having me, Matt. And if you'd like to learn more about what I do and want some help, reach out. You can find me at chrislalanne.com, which is ChrisLalanne.com.
All right. This is How Did It Happen with Matt Literal. Have a great day.